Got a network update for you guys. Neville Ray earlier was a part of the Oppenheimer 5G Summit. It was a good conference, about 40 minutes. And although he had Mike Sievert presented a couple of days back, yesterday Neville had the AMA redded. We did get additional information during this conference. So for one, I wanted to point this out and then tie it into what he had talked about. So during this conference, he referenced more than 200 million pops covered with ultra capacity. So that means he didn't give a specific number, but it means they are already past 200 million this year still. So that leads me to believe, with additional information that he also referenced, that they're going to be, and this is just a prediction of mine, don't take this as official information. I think they're going to be at 260 or 270 million by the end of next year. They hit 200 million 6 weeks before their official launch target. Neville Ray gave information during this conference that he received a text on Sunday, and this is during a 7-day period from Sunday to Sunday, that they did 900 MidBand upgrades. So early on, the target for this deployment was 1,000 radio upgrades per week. So that's 1,000 MidBand upgrades weekly. We all know that kind of slowed down during the pandemic. There was a shortage. They just weren't able to hit that peak. So they hit 200 million 6 weeks prior. And now, as of last week, from Sunday to Sunday, they did 900 radio upgrades or MidBand upgrades. So that sounds like, to me, they're now hitting their stride fully and their peak. So that just leads me to believe that they're going to hit 260 or 270 million covered by the end of next year with MidBand. It seems like now they're hitting their peak finally. It looks like more of the equipment came in the warehouse. I did hear from locally, this is locally with one of the tower companies that I speak with, that they had a little bit of a hiccup. They weren't getting equipment in stock for them to hit sites that were approved. But it looks like now, after speaking with them and now hearing Neville, that it looks like they got equipment back in stock and they're deploying. They're deploying now, and it looks like they're reaching that peak, which is, in my opinion, scary because we thought it was already fast. They hit 200 million 6 weeks prior. Now they're doing 900 weekly. That means they're going to ramp up fairly quickly. And now we're seeing markets on Root Metrics average 350 megabits a second, which T-Mobile said would take 6 years. So in the pre-guidance that they gave before the merger happened, just as a collective group, as they were guiding to what they think that 2.5 can do. Remember, at that time, they didn't have access to 2.5. They couldn't test it. They were just guesstimating by calculating and putting out estimates that they could do at the beginning 7 folds the capacity, and then over time 14, which eventually they would do averages of 300 to 400 megabits a second. So just to put that in perspective, we're getting close to 24 months into the merger. April of next year will be 2 years. They are posting markets now, as of today, that are hitting 340 megabits a second averages. So they're beating their targets. So next year, the year after, where they're going to take it is going to be insane, in my opinion, if they do it correctly. So far, so good. So he did also reference end of year, still 100 megahertz on average within the 200 million covered. My question, what's going to change in the next few weeks that they couldn't have already done? That's my question. So I'm going to wait. We're going to see. I'm still 40 megahertz in El Paso. I've talked to other people that their county is still 40 or 60, not fully 100 yet. Heck, there's even equipment Right now, there's Nokia equipment that's deployed that won't even allow them to go past 60. So, I mean, if they can get the amount needed to 100 to claim that they are doing average 100, then so be it. But for now, I'm still a bit skeptical as to what's going to change from now until the 31st of December. That's going to put them right at that target. Maybe they have something going where it's going to be more contiguous, that they're going to surprise us with another press release. Who knows? But that's what he discussed, that by the end of year, they would hit 100 million within the 200 million pops covered. I mean, 100 megahertz within the 200 million pops. And then he would get to 200 megahertz by 2023. And then that's when essentially we get to that 14 folds of capacity. And then he referenced he had another 100 megahertz to tap into after that fact to get to 300 megahertz total midband deployed in some markets. In some markets, it's a little more. In some markets, it may be a little less. But that's where essentially he can take it if need be, and depending on the usage spike on a yearly basis. And then, of course, factoring in home internet with that as well. So that's what he was also asked. Is there any capacity constraints? Have you noticed any slowdown? He says no. Right now, they're able to handle all the traffic beautifully. And he was also questioned about millimeter wave. There was a segment on that where he stated he doesn't hate millimeter wave. And I want to elaborate on that because many don't quite understand what took place here. So Verizon had millimeter wave 2016, 2017. They started deploying, which is fine because Verizon had a target. They had a goal. They were going to use millimeter wave, fixed wireless access. So they started deploying. One reason they had nothing else to deploy. They did not have midband. They didn't gain midband until C-band. So they're deploying that now. Here's why T-Mobile wasn't able to go in all on midband. I mean, millimeter wave. So I kind of want to put that in perspective just very quickly to close out the video. T-Mobile closed the merger April of 2020. They've been deploying millimeter wave since about 2018. So it's roughly, right now it's in 8 cities. Scaled to some degree, but it is in 8 cities. They never really scaled it outside of the 8 cities. They are deploying it at stadiums. They are deploying it at venues. So that's happening. He stated that. What's the reasoning behind them not going more in the direction of Verizon? Once that merger closed between them and Sprint, T-Mobile had to stop everything they were doing to concentrate on midband. One, the CapEx is not necessarily high enough to become flexible to do both. And two, for them to migrate the TNX SIM at a respectable pace, they needed to build that anchor network. The anchor network was not going to be built as quickly or as effectively if they would have incorporated millimeter wave. They had to get that midband out there, or else the T-Mobile network as we know it would have collapsed. It was a grid that was built for T-Mobile standalone. The T-Mobile network was not built to handle an additional 30 to 40 million customers influx from Sprint. That it just wasn't going to work. Verizon's grid is already built for the amount of customers that they have in all of their markets. They built the necessary density. They can handle what they got. I know in some cases it is slowing down, but they can handle it. So they built millimeter wave. T-Mobile couldn't build density fast enough to migrate customers, at least handle the traffic on a TNX basis with SIM card. They had to put that midband out there as fast as they could. So now they're at the 80% on handling the Sprint traffic without any problems. If they did not use the midband as quickly as they did, the network would have collapsed. It just would have crashed. I promise you guys. T-Mobile did not have the density or the additional density to handle all of the Sprint customers. They did not. The only way this was going to work was the midband, the additional spectrum on the T-Mobile grid. And that is it. That's the only way that was going to work. T-Mobile was and still is the #1 market share within the top 50 markets. They were that before they got Sprint. So now you add all the Sprint customers onto that grid. It was going to collapse. So they needed that midband. They needed to scale it quick. They needed to go at this as fast as they could so they could start TNXing the Sprint customers, putting a T-Mobile SIM in the compatible Sprint phones. And that is the only way that was going to work. I don't care how you flip it. I don't care how you twist it. Millimeter wave or putting a focus during that period on millimeter wave would have been a mistake by T-Mobile. And T-Mobile, they know it. They needed to dedicate all of the resources towards deploying that midband at the scale that they did within the first 2 years to migrate the T-Mobile base, the Sprint base at a decent pace. So I wanted to just put that out there for you guys to think about that, now that they have accomplished this within 80% of the footprint where most of the T-Mobile base lives, which is now including Sprint, are on ultra capacity. So within that 200 million footprint where T-Mobile acted the fastest, that's now where they can comfortably migrate that Sprint base without any problems. So let me know what you think about this in the comment section down below. Just wanted to give you guys this update. Thanks again for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.